Hello Ascenders, and welcome to our video on tournaments, everything you might ever need to know. Let's go ahead and jump in. All right, so you may know that we do tournaments in the ATA. We are an ATA school, that's an American Taekwondo Association, and we encourage people to make competition part of their journey because it's really a lot of fun, and we're going to get into all that piece. But we don't want anybody to think that this is something that you have to do, but we do want to encourage people to give it a try. All right, so ATA tournaments are about competitive excellence, but you're going to make a lot of friends. You're going to have a good time doing it. And of course, there's all of the bling, as you can see from Miss Morrow here. So you might be saying to yourself, okay, I'm curious, but what goes on in a tournament? What's the competition like? So before you get registered, we're going to go through all of the details. So there are 4 traditional events in tournament. And these things are bound to the stuff that we're doing in class. So when you go to tournament, there's a forms competition, and it's literally the exact form that you're doing in class. Now, our curriculum, we're usually doing half forms. So when you go to tournament, there will be a requirement to do the whole form. So you're going to want to make sure that you know the entire form. So that's something that if you've been with us for 2 cycles in a row, you're going to have done the first half and the second half. So you just put those pieces together and do the whole form. Weapons competition, we'll go into that in more detail, but essentially you pick the weapon that you like to do and you're going to do a form along with that as well. Combat sparring, if you've been with us for a few cycles, you will have experienced combat sparring. That's where you get your stick and your combat gear and you go out there and you try to play whack-a-mole with your opponent. And then there's sparring, so same sort of thing, just no stick, punches and kicks on your target. So you'll see that the forms and sparring are highlighted in green. When you sign up for a tournament, forms and sparring come together as a package, so you are required to purchase them both, though there are people who choose not to do both of them for a variety of reasons. But those are the traditional events. So I said that there was a little bit of detail about weapons. So you see here a picture of all the various different weapons that we work with, sticks and nunchucks and kamas, some stuff that you may not have seen before, the Chinese broadsword or the cane, bow staff and sword. But the idea is, if you're a colored belt, you go up and do a 30-second freestyle with whatever weapon you want. Now, people will make forms out of this. Some kids like to go up and just kind of show off the moves that they know. So it can cover a wide range of performances, from very much on the fly to things that are much more polished than that. However, if you are a black belt, you are required to do the form associated with your weapon. So if you're doing kamas, there is a kama form that ATA has created. If you're doing bow staff, there's a bow staff form. Nunchucks have a nunchuck form. And black belts are required to do that form in this event. Now, there are also creative and extreme events, and there are 4 of those. Creative events lets you choreograph your original form using any traditional move. So creative forms are when you have no weapon, you're just going out there doing your feet and your hands, but you can throw whatever kind of interesting kicks and punches and strikes that you're interested in doing. Creative weapons is much like the weapon form from the previous slide, but you get to make up whatever form you want, and you can even set it to music. Now, in extreme forms and extreme weapons, you can do just about anything you want. Creative forms and creative weapons are limited in that you must be using traditional moves. So you're not going to be able to do any splits or cartwheels or front rolls or aerials of any kind. You can't let go of your weapon in creative weapons. You'll be disqualified. In extreme forms, you can do cartwheels and splits and aerials. In extreme weapons, you can do all of those things and throw your weapon up in the air and catch it. So extreme is much more creative than creative. Extreme really allows you to be much more acrobatic and bring just whatever other skills you might have into it. Also, you can do music in either creative or extreme, in either forms or weapons. So a lot of people build their routine to go along with certain music and things like that. So it can be a lot of fun. So this is very much, yeah, where people bring in their dance and their other things. All right, so the ring that you're going to be competing in is a 5 by 5 meter ring. So there are going to be 3 judges, and you can see in the picture here, we've got a judge here, we've got a scorekeeper here, we've got a judge here, we've got a timekeeper here, and we've got another judge there. And this is the competitor. So the judges are arranged in this order. Because you have 2 corner judges and 1 center judge, and then you have somebody who's literally writing down everything that needs to be written down, and you're having somebody who's keeping track of time and or points in the event of sparring. And we'll get into that stuff in a little bit more detail. Rings can have up to 16 competitors, and the larger the event, the more likely there are to be more competitors. And a ring may have multiple divisions that they run simultaneously. So it depends on the size of the event, and we'll get into that in a little bit more detail as well. Most of the time, for many rings, you're going to see somewhere in the neighborhood of 8 to 10 competitors. That's a pretty good size ring to run. You start getting up to 16 competitors and it's going to take you a long time. So for judging, for the ease of judging, they tend to try to keep it a little bit fewer. But in very large events, they have to have rings with that many competitors. Okay, so let's talk about forms and judging. So essentially, you're going to have 3 judges in your ring, and there's going to be a center judge who's looking at everything that you're doing. There's going to be a judge seated to their left side who's center judge A, and they're going to be watching your feet, your stances, your kicks, things like that. And then there's judge B who sits to their right, who's going to be checking out your hands and your strikes. So each of these judges is going to throw a score. They're going to stick their fingers out, and they're going to throw a score typically from 1 to 9. There are some special cases in which somebody might receive a 0, but generally speaking, you're going to get a range from 1 to 9. And then when those scores are all combined, you're going to get usually from 3 to 27. So all of these judges, when you're doing your standard form, they're going to know all the moves that you're supposed to be doing because they know all the forms. And so they're going to be looking to see how well you're performing each of your moves. But they're comparing your moves to everybody else's moves for the people who showed up for your division on that day. So they're not scoring you compared to some perfect external format. They're comparing you to all the other people who came that day. So the first 3 competitors will each stand up, they'll do their form, and then they'll go sit down. And then after 3 competitors have gone, the judges will call those 3 up, they'll stand in a line. The first person to do their form will step forward, the center judge will call for score, fingers get put out, and the scores get called. Then that person steps back, the second one steps forward, and the process repeats. This creates the baseline for the day, and so most judges will have some formula where they're saying like, okay, I'm going to give out like an 8 for the person of the first 3 that I thought was the best. I'm going to give out a 6 for the person in the middle. I'm going to give out a 4 for the person who I thought needed the most improvement. Or if 2 were really close, they'll scooch them closer. But the idea there is to leave room within that range of 3 to 27 for other competitors to fall into those spots. And so if somebody is in the first 3 and they're really amazing, you don't necessarily still want to give them a 9 because there might be somebody who comes out and just knocks your socks off. But different judges are going to do it different way. More experienced judges have seen an awful lot of competitors, and so if they see somebody who's a 9, they're going to recognize that. All right, that's that. Next, for all sparring and combat sparring, the judges will stand. Usually the scorekeeper and the timekeeper are going to move to the center chairs, and the judges will stand in what we call the triangle. And they will try to maintain that triangle around the edges of the ring while the combatants are in there doing their thing. This allows the judges to see from different points of view. So one of the things that we always have to tell everybody is it's not what you think happened, it's what the judges believe they saw. So I'll have some people say, oh, well, I hit that guy first. If the judges didn't see it and they didn't call it, then that's not going to be something that they're going to take into consideration. So that's why there's 3 judges, so that if 2 judges think they saw one thing and another judge thinks they saw something else, the 2 judges that saw the same thing are going to call the points for that. Next, it's important to know that combat sparring has a 2-minute limit, but it goes to 10 points because it tends to go really, really fast. And so there's a little bit of wiggle room for you to come back from a deficit. Sparring, on the other hand, is 2 minutes, but it only goes to 5 points. So we'll go over all points and things like that. If you're into the sparring and the combat sparring, we usually talk about that in class, so we can go all that kind of stuff later. But when any judge sees a hit, they call break. Both competitors go back to their starting position, and then the center judge calls for scores, and they'll point number of fingers and which side they believed scored those points, and then whoever has the majority calling for them will earn points. Sometimes each judge sees something different and there will be no points. So we really want to make sure everybody understands that there are no requirements to compete at tournament. You can be of any age, you can be of any belt rank, you can be of any ability. So competitors that come to tournaments are going to be organized into divisions of similar ability. There are special divisions for people who have special needs. There's a mental special needs division. There's a physical special needs division. Tiny Tigers get their own divisions. And there's even a non-competitive division. In the past, it's been called novice. I forget what they call it now, but it's a special tick box. And essentially, if you like, I don't know my whole form, but I want to go to tournament and compete. And show off my form, then you can do that. So the non-competitive things really make it so that anybody can go. They don't have to worry about winning or losing at that point. It's just a performance. Divisions are organized by gender, rank, and age. Now, in the ATA, they're very forward-thinking in a lot of ways. However, when it comes to gender, we're really talking about 2 genders that are recognized, boys and girls, or men and women, if you prefer. So those divisions are not bridged. You may see a ladies' division and a men's division being conducted in the same ring, but the ladies and the men are not competing against one another. This is particularly true of sparring. Ladies and men, boys and girls are never going to spar each other at a tournament. Rank divisions are typically broken down by belt color. So usually it's going to be like a white, orange, yellow ring, and then a camo through blue, and then blue and above, or camo through purple and blue and above. And then black belt rings are usually like 1st degree black belt, and then 2nd and 3rd degree black belts, and then 4th and above. However, depending on the size of the event, you may see some of those divisions compressed. I've seen a 1st through 3rd black belt ring. I've seen a white through camo ring. So it really depends. The bigger the event, the more competitors there are, the less likely that any of those compressions are going to happen. Similarly, age, Tiny Tigers are all put in the same divisions together. Then it's usually like a 6 and 7, 8 and 9, 10 and 11, or 11 and 12, and then 13 to 15. So these age ranks are usually age divisions are usually broken up by 2-year increments. And then when you get up to 18, it's going to be 18 through 29, and so they jump up to a 10-year division breakdown. So 18 to 29, 30 to 39, 40 to 49, 50 to 59. And again, the older you are, the more likely you are to get compressed into a division with younger members, because most of the people who are in the ATA who are competing are younger people. And so in my ring, for example, I've been in 40 to 49 for a long time. We usually get 3 or 4 people in our division, and sometimes as many as 6 or 7. But a lot of times if we have just 3 or 4 people, they're going to put in the 50 to 59s in our division. They're going to compress those together so that there's more competition. So you're not just there competing against the same 3 people all the time. But again, the bigger the event, the more likely it is that you're going to see people from your same age and rank division coming from a lot of different places. And so those big events draw more people. The more people that are there, the more likely you are to be competing against people who are very much like you are. So ATA tournaments have a lot of different competitors, a lot of different ages, different ranks, doing different events. So there's really something for everyone, and we really hope you consider coming out and trying a tournament. Everyone who competes at a tournament will earn a pin for that tournament, no matter how many different events you compete in. Also, those people who place in the top 3 in their division will earn medals. So each event is going to have a first, second, and third place. So if you go to tournament and you compete in more events, then there's a better chance that you're going to medal because you're competing in more things. You're having more opportunities to show off how awesome you are. I know competitors who focus on just a couple of things, maybe, sparring and combat sparring, because those are their things. I've known one competitor who was like, okay, combat sparring is my thing. I know other competitors who are like, okay, weapons are my thing. So I'm going to go and do forms and sparring because, I always sign up for those, but, weapons and then extreme weapons and creative weapons, those are the things I really want to get into. And then I know other competitors who are like, woo, I do everything. I just go and play tournament all day long, and I try my hand at every possible thing I can do. Those students who are in the leadership program can earn points by placing at the tournament. So if you get a first, second, or third, not only are you going to get a medal for that division for that event, but you're going to earn points in that event in your division that can be used to put you in the rankings for championship titles, which we're going to get into next. There are 3 main kinds of tournaments. We call Class C tournaments in-house tournaments because they're put on by an individual school, and they're usually held at that school's location. So if a particular school owner owns like 3 schools, then all the students from their 3 schools can compete in that tournament. If you have a couple of schools that are close in their affiliation. For example, I'm a student of Master Carson Clues, who owns ATA Martial Arts Kaiser. He often invites the Ascenders to come down to his in-house tournaments so that they can compete against his students, and his students have a greater variety of people to compete against as well. But in-house tournaments tend to be very small, 1 or 2 schools. So you're usually talking no more than 100 or maybe 200, depending on how big a particular owner's organization is. But they tend to be the smallest, and they're the easiest to organize because you're just dealing with 1 school. But if you're looking at bigger tournaments, you talk about Class B tournaments. Class B tournaments are put on usually by 1 school as well, but it's an open invitation to everybody to attend. And so Class B tournaments, everybody in the region is invited. Other people from outside the region might also come to these Class B tournaments, but usually in smaller numbers because travel is usually a factor. But Class B tournaments are usually 300 or 400 students, maybe as big as 600 students. Once a region has hosted a Class B tournament that has, 6 to 650 3 years in a row, then they can qualify to host a Class A tournament. And all of this has to do with like scheduling preferences and this sort of stuff, which doesn't really involve the students, but it's one of those things that involves the school owners. The other reason why I bring this up is that if you're competing at a Class C tournament, you're generally going to earn fewer points for your titles because Class C tournaments have fewer competitors. So Class B tournaments are going to earn you more points because there are going to be more competitors there, and Class A tournaments will earn you a lot of points because there's a lot of competitors there. People travel a long distance. If they're really serious about their competition, they'll travel a long distance to go to a Class A tournament. And so all of these points we'll get into a little bit more deeply in a few minutes, but the idea here is A's are the biggest, B's are kind of mid-size, and C's are the smallest. So there are also three kinds of big tournaments. The district championship is a special invitational tournament. So it's open to students from within a particular district. And so our district includes Oregon, Washington, Idaho, and southwestern Canada. So students from any of these areas may come to the district championship if they have earned points and are in the top 10 for their state. So in Oregon, for example, when I was doing competitions really regularly, I got invited to districts several times. Part of that is because I was in the 40 to 49 men's division of colored belts, and there just weren't that many of us in that division, so it was pretty easy to get into the top 10. If you're talking like 10 to 12 girls division, color belts or black belts, there's a lot of people competing in those divisions, and so getting in the top 10 in anything is going to be much more challenging. So I was big into weapons, and so I usually did a creative weapons and an extreme weapons and the regular weapons competition. So when I went to districts, I didn't get in the top 10 in all of the categories that I competed in, but I usually got into the top 10 in weapons, combat weapons, and extreme weapons. So when I went to district championships, I only competed in those three pieces because that's what I was invited to compete in. And so districts is open to color belts and to black belts, and it's an invitation based on your standing in your division in each of the particular events that are available. Differently are the national events. So ATA International puts on the Fall Nationals, usually in the western part of the United States. Right now, they're running them in Las Vegas. And then they do, sorry, I totally said Fall Nationals, but those are the Spring Nationals, or on the western side of the United States. Then they do the Fall Nationals, usually on the eastern side of the United States. I think it's been in Florida for a long time. And then they have the World's Expo. The World's Expo actually has two tournaments because it's the very last tournament of the season at the beginning of the week of World Expo, and then they have the very first tournament of the next season at the end of the week. And so the tournament at the beginning of Worlds is open only to black belts. So all the black belts who have either gotten in the top 10 standings in the world or who have won their district championships, they can go to Worlds to compete for a world title. If you are there and you're a color belt, you may want to go to the tournament at the end. Black belts are invited too, of course, because this is called the AAA tournament. It's the biggest tournament and the first tournament of the season. So if you were to get a first place at the AAA tournament, you're pretty much guaranteed to be in the top 10 for that year. So you're going to be invited to your district championships. You're going to be invited to the world championships next year if you're a black belt. So Worlds is kind of a big deal. But in addition, Nationals and Worlds also offer all kinds of training opportunities. So there's special trainings with high ranks, there's licensee discovery seminars, there's trainings for licensees to kind of improve their business. There's just a ton of stuff. And there's always, stuff for sale, t-shirts and gear and all this kind of stuff. So it's a big deal. And I went to the World's Expo a few years back when they were holding it in Little Rock, Arkansas. Mrs. Morrow went to the 50th anniversary expo. It's a lot of fun, and everybody who's everybody is there. So just as a point of reference, for those people who become a state champion, you earn state championship by being #1 in the state in your division in a particular event. So this state championship uniform that we're looking at here is for, oh gosh, she did like 5 different events. So you can see that there are different patches on the back of her uniform. So she competed in a bunch of different events, and she got first place in the state for all 5 of these events. And so she got her state championship uniform with these patches on them. For me, I didn't get state champion that year, but I won at districts in these 2 events. And then this is somebody named Amber Smith. I don't know her, but this is her world champ patch for 2016. So the patches indicate the events that you were scored in, and the year is on there. Black letters are for state champ uniforms, blue letters for district champ uniforms, and red letters for world champ uniforms. So Mrs. Morrow and myself went to the World Expo at different years, and we competed with the best people in the world in our division in the events that we had scored well in. Just for point of reference, I was in a ring of about 12 men competing in the events that I was competing in, and I came in middle of the pack, so 6th or 7th, somewhere around there. You'll often hear people or see like t-shirts that say Red Letter Chaser. Red Letter Chaser are people who Red Letter Chasers are people who are trying to earn a world championship uniform. So most of them are going to be 1 or 2 events. So seeing somebody who's a world champ in just like 5 or 6 events, that's very rare for somebody to be that good in everything in a particular year. But anyway, there are people out there who are looking for that, and it can be a lot of fun. Okay, so you're hooked. You've been bitten by the bug, as they say. Go to ataeasysignup.com and get yourself registered. You have to create your profile, and they're going to ask for a bunch of information. They're going to ask how tall you are, what rank you are, what your ATA number is, all this kind of stuff. If you have any questions, we are more than happy to help you get registered, get signed, get your profile set up. Once your profile is set up, the only thing you have to update is if you change your height or you're going to change your rank. So those things just get updated each tournament season. When you go in for the first time, just check all that information and make sure it's up to date. Once it's up to date, your profile is all ready to go. Signing up for a particular tournament is relatively easy. You basically just pick the tournament that you want to sign up for. You decide which events you're going to register for, and then you're done. You pay. Most of the time, like the sparring and forms combo is going to be about $45, and most other things are going to be $20 to $25 on top of that. So you pretty much have to sign up for forms and sparring in order to do the rest of it. But once you're signed up for that, it's usually $20 or $25 as an add-on fee for each event. So it's really not terribly expensive. There's also discounts for families. So if you're a family training with us, we have already linked your accounts in the back end. So once your profiles are all set up, we will link you as a family, and then family discounts for multiple people competing will automatically be attributed to you when you go to checkout. So you get a little bit of a discount for doing multiple competitors. But again, if you have any more questions about any of that stuff, you know how to get in touch with us. Just let us know. All right, that's it for me. My name is Nathan Morrow, and we're Ascent Martial Arts. And remember, we change lives.